All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming today. I'd like to call the 5th session of the Hawaii County Council Committee on Environmental Management to order. Today is April 30th, 2013, and the time is 10:46. We are here in the council chambers in Kona. Please turn your cell phones, pagers, and other mobile communication devices on silent mode or turn them off. I'd like to start by introducing the members of the committee present today. To my far right, Mr. Onishi, Ms. Willie, Ms. Poindexter, Ms. Ford, Mr. Yoshimoto, Ms. Eoff will be here in just a minute, Mr. Kanuha, Mr. Logan, and myself, Zendo Kern, as the chair. Calling the meeting to order. I'd first like to call for statements from the public on items on the agenda. I will check in with Waimea. Any testifiers in Waimea?
Good morning, Chair. We do not have any testifiers for your committee.
Thank you. Pahoa?
Good morning, Chair. We do not have any testifiers for your committee this morning.
Thank you very much. Ka'u?
Good morning, Chair. Yes, I have one testifier here.
Okay, thank you.
I have Fortune Otter, and she is commenting on Bill number 64.
Was that Bill 64? Ka'u?
Let's begin.
Okay, I am speaking on the agenda item to clear lots of unwanted flora, trash, invasive species,
okay, yes, go ahead. You have
and
3
other
minutes.
things like that. Ocean View residents definitely have the above problem and would be highly concerned on how the project would be implemented. Who defines the need for removal? Is there going to be county help with the removal? How will lot owners be notified? What is the process, and what are the penalties for non-compliance? The majority of lots on Ocean View are unoccupied, with many of the owners on the mainland. When their lots and their pukas, lava tubes are filled up with trash, that would constitute a major problem beyond their control and probably without their knowledge. How would that be handled? Many of the vacant lots on the island fill up with trash because Ocean View has a very limited trash removal. We only have dump once a week, and they fill 3 containers, and often the cars are lined up around the block. In conclusion, without careful thought and handling, this could turn into a nightmare of bureaucracy with the property owner the victim. It could conceivably turn into taking of property by the county. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ka'u, that was your only testifier, correct?
Yes, we only had one.
Okay, thank you. Hilo, do we have any testifiers in Hilo?
Good morning, Chair Kern. We have no testifiers in Hilo.
Thank you very much. And here in Kona, we do not have any testifiers. That'll conclude our statements from the public. Madam Clerk, will you please read in Communication 246.
Communication 246, Bill 64 amends Chapter 20, Article 2 of the Hawaii County Code, 1983, 2005 edition as amended, relating to clearing occupied and unoccupied lots. From Council Member Zendo Kern, dated April 12, 2013, changes the title of Article 2 to Clearing Occupied and Unoccupied Lots, adds occupied and, adds definitions for refuse, undergrowth, and unsafe flora, changes title section 20-21 to removal of refuse, undergrowth, and unsafe flora required, adds refuse and unsafe flora, and amends that section, and changes title to section 20-22 to complaint by adjacent or abutting owners request to clear, adds or abutting, deletes owners, and adds owners, plural, and amends that section.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. May I have a motion to move to refer Bill 64 to the Director of the Department of Environmental Management and the Environmental Management Commission for their comments and recommendations?
So move.
Thank you, very good. At this point in time, I will be relinquishing the chair to the Vice Chair, Mr. Kanuha. The chair is yours.
Thank you. Let the record show that I have assumed the chair, and we'll start with Mr. Kern since this is his bill. Yeah? Did you want to start first in discussion?
Point of order, please?
Yes.
Are we discussing his motion to refer this, or are we discussing the actual bill?
It's been, yeah, the motion to defer, but, we're discussing the bill, too. Yeah.
Yeah, we're discussing the bill, but the appropriate motion is to send it through them as we've done with other bills.
Okay.
Mr. Kern, go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kanua. Mr. Chair? So yeah, the purpose of this is, it should, in the unsafe flora, it should probably say mostly Albizia, but we can't do that. So what it is right now is, as many of you know, we have a lot of, around the whole island, a lot in Puna, where there's vacant lots, the lot owner is not around, and there's the Albizia tree primarily that grows very fast, very quickly, and it could be on the property line, it can be overhanging somebody's home, fence, garden, car, and there's really no means for them to get that tree removed. So what this does is this will allow the property owner that's being affected by the tree would make contact with the lot owner, and if the lot owner responds and they can resolve it on their own, that's fine. If they can't do that, then they request to the mayor, and the mayor would then send out a letter saying, please remove the unsafe flora. That's what it is. It's a tree that's endangering somebody's property or body. And at that point in time, they will send out a letter asking them to comply. If they do not comply within a certain period of time, Public Works will go in, remove the tree, take it down, and they will bill that property owner for that. And so it's not this isn't about costing the county money, but it's a way to have mainly the Albizia situation under control with actually somebody being able to do something about that. And the county would be authorized to put a lien on the property of the person that had the tree removed if they're not able to take care of it or comply with that. Wanted to put this out there. It's been a major issue for quite a while now, and Albizia is spreading around the island, and people right now have big trees overhanging their property, and they could fall on them at any time, and I think it's important that we are able to do something to change this. This, to me, should be technically going through Public Works, but it's an environmental thing. I did sit down with Public Works. I talked with them. They supported it. They gave a couple recommendations for any changes, tweaks to make, and they're on board with this because this will mostly affect them. They'll be the ones at the end of the day that would be called. I'm very much looking forward to discussion and hearing what other people have to say, and for now I will yield and answer any questions and hear whatever anybody has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. I just want to let the council members know that Deputy Public Works Director Brandon Gonzalez is in Hilo if anybody has any questions for him. So was there any other discussion? Ms. Ford.
Thank you. Brandon, you better come forward. I think the intent of this legislation is well meant, but I think we need to talk about unintended consequences. And I have, unfortunately, some personal experience with this. I'm afraid that this may cause the bad neighbor policy to start operating in a particular neighborhood. The bill itself does not tell us who's going to do the inspection, only that the mayor's office is going to handle this. I don't have any idea how many more inspectors. What Mr. Kern has stated is this is a widespread problem, is in fact true. Whether it's Albizia, I don't know what the common name of that is. Do you happen to know? Okay. I don't know if it's Albizia or the tulip tree or Christmas berry or guinea grass or anything else that might be out there. But there are, we have our inspectors, whether they're in planning or whether they're in Public Works. I don't think we've got enough inspectors to run around and do this. But anyway, so the mayor then writes a letter to the people who own the, quote, unsafe flora, and then they ignore him. And then he sends somebody out to take out their tree. Now, we all know that trees, and tree roots in particular, lift pavement and sidewalks, and we've got this problem every place. We also know that the branches on some trees that are brittle, like jacaranda or monkey pod, can just spontaneously crack, and you've got things with a branch this big dropping on people or cars or roads. So that's why I say this is a well-intentioned piece of legislation. However, let's say you got a neighbor who's not very pleasant, and they decide they don't like you and they're going to get you. And so they start writing letters to the mayor saying, take out his tree. There are some numbers in here that were really kind of frightening to me. It says all the adult residents within 500 feet, a radius of 500 feet, of any boundary or the property owner adjacent or abutting can write these letters. So if you had somebody multiple lots away, but within 500 feet, they could come after you. They might come after you if you are a council member and they don't like you. You know, I mean, it could really get that bad. And then the only exception is if the tree is an exceptional tree, listed someplace as some type of an exceptional tree, the owner shall write a treatment plan for its continued safe existence. But you could have homeowners associations, unfortunately some bad neighbors getting involved in this. You could have, in my subdivision, you could have somebody who would say they want every tree away from the road up to, 500 feet? You know, you could denude your neighborhood of your canopies, which is going to impact endangered species, other plants, other animals, things like that. So the question I have for Mr. Gonzalez, I think he's snapping on his desk over there. I'm not quite sure. Mr. Gonzalez.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Brandon Gonzalez, Deputy Director, Department of Public Works.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, I've been talking about the potential inadvertent consequences of having maybe a bad neighbor, going after people, and I would like you to comment on that because I'm concerned. It's not that I disagree with this legislation. I'm concerned about the unintended consequences and empowering the bad neighbor policy.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Your concerns are take into account real-world situations. I wasn't napping, by the way. I was squinting and highlighting a provision that you were reading out loud. So,
well, thank you.
And, there's always the possibility that any type of law could be abused or utilized in a way that it wasn't truly intended. I think we have to remember that a lot of this existing Section 2020 already exists in the code, and now it's just being revised to include occupied property. So the adult residents within a radius of 500 feet from any boundary, it was already there. And now what I'm looking and I'm reading from the amendment is now you're including occupied property and including unsafe flora and abutting owners. I guess in one sense it's because another situation where neighbors aren't being good neighbors and not taking care of their property next to someone. So I can see both sides of the coin, and I would like to point out that one of the controls in the code may be that the mayor or their designee, because what really happens is there's an office of complaints and information, but each department also has numbers and emails that the public can call and submit concerns. So for trees, most of the times it's DPW that gets it. And then there has to be a determination that the uncultivated undergrowth or unsafe flora complained about is to an extent that the lot has become or is likely to become a fire, health, safety, property damage, or crime hazard. So, I mean, that's the criteria and some of the circumstances that we would have to articulate for the official action. And I overheard Councilman Kern mention that Public Works will cut down the trees. Kind of true, but thank you for that credit. But we have to admit that there are some trees and projects, especially if the trees are too large or they are located in hard-to-reach areas where our skilled county workers, it's even beyond the scope of what they are comfortable achieving. So we do contract out with certain tree removal companies for some jobs. So that's still a possibility with this code provision as well, because it just says the county may take the steps, I think, to have the unsafe flora removed. So just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you. I think I might have gotten to my 5 minutes, so I'm going to yield right now, but I'd like to have the floor again.
That's fine. Any other discussion? Or did...
I just want
I know Ms. Ford had a lot of questions beside her original, so I wanted to have Mr. Kern respond to a few of those.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez pretty much did that. I just wanted to point out that I didn't draft this entire bill. This already exists. I just added language in there to create unsafe flora and to have it be applicable to occupied as well as unoccupied lots, but it already says in there, if the majority of all adult residents within a radius of 500 feet from any boundary, that language already exists. I was trying to make it tangible for the person sitting in their house with a massive tree overhanging their home while their kids are sleeping and the wind starts blowing. That's what this is for, and it was just kind of adjusting the condition, the law that we already have to help out more people. So I just wanted to respond to that.
Thank you. Ms. Eoff, and then...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I think Mr. Kern added the complete definition of unsafe flora, and the bill itself defines what an emergency or threat to public health, safety, and private property would be. So I don't think we need to be too worried about that neighbor coming after neighbor problem here. I think this actually prevents that because there's good definitions of what would require a tree to be taken out.
Ms. Willie?
I do have some issues just in terms of private property, and I realize that this is all a matter of balancing, but often some of the most significant trees are boundary trees and run along the boundary, and I know my house is built right up against a boundary line, and I just figure they're senior to my house, but you do start, whether it's windbreaks or property lines, at least in Waimea, I've seen a lot of significant trees gone that may not be on the exceptional tree list. And in fact, to my knowledge, the mayor has yet to appoint any members to the exceptional tree committee. I may be wrong about that. So I do have some concern where we are, someone has private property, another person sort of builds up closer to the boundary line, and in my view somewhat assumes the risk, and then here it is, I want you to cut these trees down because they're endangering my house. So I don't know, I'm just trying to play this out in terms of those unintended consequences and how to balance it. So I would be interested, if you're referring this to the committee, to somewhat think about that balance, especially in areas where trees are often used for property lines. I also wanted to say, I have another question, and that's in terms of the definition of unsafe flora and where that intersects with invasive species or undesirables. So if you have kiawe trees, which are technically came in after 1778, I consider them very beneficial in many places, and yet others would consider them, oh no, this is an invasive species. It definitely is in the unsafe flora category. I would like more clarification on that we're not getting into something, whether it's a kiawe or Albizia, that no, this is an undesirable tree and therefore we want those along the boundary cut. So just in terms of what's brought up to the committee, I would appreciate that some of those issues be addressed. I'd also, two other minor points, just where if the what I think Ms. Ford brought up, where it says there's endangered or protected species or an exceptional tree, that the owner would be given the opportunity to submit a treatment plan. I'm not sure that we really need to just limit that to endangered species. I would like it to be whatever, if somebody has a plan how they're going to check it and have the arborist come, maybe open that up a little more broadly. Maybe there's a reason, Councilmember Kern, for not doing so, but I want to raise that. And lastly, I want to point out, stress what Brandon said. I think we ought to stay away from referring complaints to the mayor's office and maybe do it. I would probably have done this to Public Works or one of the departments. And on a final note, I just want to say, there have been many times, or a number of times, I've strongly disagreed with trees that the county has considered potentially threatening, that were really incredible trees in Waimea that are still, I'm mourning, where they were not at all rotten, but they were large, and maybe let's just get them away. They're near the highway. So I don't want to get where we're placing so much burden on our departments to, now we have occupied agents, occupied lots. Where are we funding this? So look at those issues. So I just raise these as concerns so that when they go to whatever committee, that those are some of the issues I would appreciate being addressed. Thank you.
Mr. Kern, did you want to respond to those questions real fast?
Please do. Yes, I would. In regards to the windbreaks, I don't think that's going to be considered unsafe flora. Windbreaks have been there, whether they were pre-existing or you're planting a windbreak. That's different. You're generally using a different type of tree, podocarpus, peelybark eucalyptus. I don't think that would be deemed as unsafe flora. So those exist. They're part of the property or part of the property's process. The definition of the unsafe flora poses an immediate fire, health, safety, property damage, or criminal treatment to persons or adjacent property structures, including buildings, roofs. So that it's an immediate threat. It's not like that might be. It's like, no, there's an Albizia tree. It's overhanging somebody's house. That's a problem. Not to say there's a nice windbreak that's been there for 20 years, cut it down. That's not an immediate threat. That's not unsafe flora, in my opinion. So there might need to be some tweaks, and there's going to be some interpretation in there, and we'll have to see how that goes. As far as the exceptional trees go, that just seemed to make sense to me. Now, if there's somebody that has a tree on their property that they really like and the neighbor's complaining about it, I would think that they would be able to get together and hopefully make some type of treatment plan for that. Chances are the person's not going to be arguing about their Albizia. They're going to be arguing about having to cut it down. But that's being a responsible property owner and being on your property, taking down those trees when they're manageable and not when they're 80 feet tall and overhanging. So, obviously there's some questions to still be answered as far as it's going to play out in a negative way. I think it'll play out in a positive way, because right now there's people that are seriously concerned about trees falling on their home while their kids are sleeping in it.
Can I ask him one question, follow-up on that?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Okay, so let's just say with eucalyptus trees, and those are there along someone's boundary, or the Albizia, and then someone builds up close to those after, they move in and build up, and, the tree's growing. Would you see them, that homeowner that's now put their house where I consider there's a known risk or should have reasonably ascertainable risk, I would not want the cypress trees along my boundary, or if they were eucalyptus, to say, eucalyptus drop a lot of limbs. And I think this is really unsafe. And I'm going, okay, well, here it is, it's a damp area, I need them, they're good. It's everybody's view of what's what's dangerous. But I think this is good for the discussion when it goes to the committee, and just, what if the trees, do they have a little seniority or over the person that builds up next to them on the boundary?
May I respond? Yeah, Ms. Wu, that's a great question. I think if somebody was had their property, they clear their home area, and they go and they want to build kind of somewhat close to their property line in compliance with their setbacks, and there's massive Albizia trees there, that's a different story than there being eucalyptus trees that are there. Maybe we need to look at bringing in some type of amendment to have a provision for that, because I see what you're saying. I mean, if you have a windbreak that's been there for 20 years, and yes, eucalyptuses do drop quite a few branches, and the person wants to go build right underneath the thing and say, hey, come down and cut my trees down, that's not the intent of this. But that's a good question. I think we should look at maybe incorporating that somehow. Maybe we'll get back a comment or recommendation from environmental management. I can talk with Public Works about that as well, and try to find some balance in that, because that's a good point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Onishi, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I really like this. When I was working with the seniors out in Hamakua side, there's a lot of, I guess, homes that are close, and there's a lot of, I guess, trees and so forth. And then this one senior, the trees were like real close. I mean, it's like the branches was going over towards her house, but because I guess it's not, it didn't have occupied, now they couldn't really do anything. So we had to go I tried to get them going to mediation, but you know, the neighbor wouldn't even go to that. So we ended up is like, okay, if the trees fall into their house, then they're gonna have to sue. So I really like this that you put that in, but then I can see one influx of requests going to come in, and so that's where, you know, the question might be to Brandon is like, how are you folks going to deal with this?
Thank you, Councilman Onishi. That's a really good question. I think Ms. Ford said it, and I agree with her. This is well-intentioned. It's going to be useful. It's actually similar to state law, where the state civil defense can go in non-emergency situations and remove dangerous trees or branches that pose hazards, stabilize rocks and soils, and clean streams. When it comes down to getting it done, we are kind of stretched with our existing resources, and so we would have to figure out on how to restructure our staffing, or if we can get the funding to add staffing, or we're going to have to reprioritize, because these are all things that come in on a monthly basis to us, and we're constantly having to prioritize the needs of the public.
Okay, good. So I guess once this goes to the DM's commission, maybe you can forward that to Public Works to see if, you know, if they're going to tweak anything to that. To me, the other thing is just that, you know, the judgment of, like we were talking earlier, what's going to be unsafe, what's going to be safe, and so forth. So I think that's where another problem I can foresee might happen. Yeah, and but like I said, I like this because of you know, I've seen the situations, and because it was not occupied, so I mean, or it was because it was occupied, this law wasn't in there, and so now with putting that in, that's going to really help out the neighbors where, you know, people don't take care of their properties and the trees around. But this reminds me of what Honolulu just passed, and that was about having where if your neighbor is not taking care of their yard or their property, you know, and it makes the community or that neighborhood looks bad, you know, they can be assessed a penalty. But good job, thank you.
May I respond real quick?
Sure.
Mr. Nishi, I did send it through Public Works already before I brought it here, because I had a greater effect on them than environmental management. Look forward to getting any other comments that they have as it goes through, but I did put it through them to get their feedback and sat down with them twice to talk to them about that.
Good. Well, it's just that, like, I guess Brandon mentioned, like, you know, if they're going to be getting extra funding for this, I mean, you know, so forth. So I think they have still some more questions.
So do I. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Onishi. Mr. Ilagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I do want to say I support Councilmember Kern's bill. As a council member in Puna, there is a lot of concern about hazardous trees. And the thing we need to do is we need to tweak it. That's well in the discussions that we're having. And I had some of the unintended consequences I wanted to discuss. And first, I wanted to ask a question to Deputy Director Gonzalez. And one of them, I do want to state, Albizia trees, they're one of the concerns that I'm getting in Puna. And the reason why their residents are concerned is because Albizia trees, they're brittle when and one of the things is they grow really, really fast. It's like 1 foot a month, I believe. And when I look at this, at first I wanted to mention private property because I don't like the government getting into private property. But when it comes to public safety, I believe that's when we need to step in. And when they're concerned about their safety on like Albizias, the fact that they might fall on their property, that's when I realize we need to help them out. And one of the things that really concern me is first I need to ask the Deputy Director, how much on average would it cost to take care of one of these problems? If you were to cut down let's say albizia trees or any floral hazardous trees, on average, do you know how much it costs?
I don't have those figures, but this is what we have, why we think this is a good idea for this change in the law. I think we can all agree that it's easier to maintain a tree when it's younger and smaller. So we have had conditions, say in a drainage culvert, that gets overgrown. If there had been maintenance 6 months earlier, we wouldn't have to use so much heavy machinery. The thickness of the branches of whatever was growing would be it would be less thick. It would be easier to remove by hand. So what this proposed legislation does is it kind of reminds people to be, I guess, good neighbors. You wouldn't think you'd need it, and if the conditions can be addressed early on, and then it's a lot cheaper and easier to address when the trees are smaller or the growth is smaller than when it gets larger. But I don't have the specific figures. I do recall that maybe 2 years ago in Hamakua there were some trees that we had to contract out because the trees were of such height and located on a slope that we did not have the equipment to be able to remove the trees, catch them with a sling, and then drop them in a safe area. So we have had to contract out, but I don't recall the figures.
Would you say it was in the thousand?
Oh, yes.
Or would you say it was in the
tens of
within
thousands?
the thousand?
Tens of thousands.
Okay. Well, I do want to mention, since you talked about albizia, is that when you do cut it down, we do have to make sure that we do poison them. So what happens is some owners, they cut it down and then they forget about it, and in months there's a forest of albizia. So then they'll probably call the department again. So taking care of it and actually killing the root. But the scenario that I wanted to put in your minds is what I'm worried about the most is some of the residents in fixed income, they are trying to balance their electricity bill and their food, and there's this tree on their property that they can't spend thousands of dollars, but the county comes in and cuts it, and then now they have that bill to deal with. And that's what concerns me the most, because now they have this additional additional bill that they didn't have before. But at the same time, we do have to think about public safety. And what the deputy director also mentioned is it will make property owners be more responsible and take care of it early on. And that's what we need the public to start doing. I'm looking for this bill to be tweaked some more, and the complaint process to be not just the mayor, but what you mentioned with your department. And also, we do need to get you more funding because you'll have more paperwork to process. So there's a lot of things that needs to be done to make it sustainable. And I hope we do discuss it, and when we do get back with the bill after it gets revised in environmental management. Thank you.
Ms. Ford.
Thank you. I'd just like to comment on a couple other things, and this goes on in my district, on Napapo Road. Every time, first of all, there are safety reasons to at least trim back a tree pretty well and get the branches at least above the utility lines. Cable company wants them out, phone company wants them out, Helco wants them out. So if they're in the utility lines, of course, the tree canopy needs to be raised up higher than that. That does not, however, take care of brittle branches coming down, regardless of the species. But a mature tree adds a tremendous amount to the property value of the house. And so when you start talking about taking mature trees out, you are potentially also removing a portion of that owner's property value. And that's a concern of me. I know that every time the tree trimmers come into Napapo Road and start trying to do things, I start getting calls day and night, that the ambiance of the neighborhood is being destroyed if they're going to take out all these trees. And yes, there are some property owners that let the trees really go to what. So there is a balance there. I'm not quite sure, when it comes to public safety, if a tree has been struck by lightning, it's about to fall down. If it's termite ridden, it's going to come down. If it's leaning and starting to tip more, it needs to go. Okay, we all understand public safety. But again, I'm very, very concerned that we're going to have some really serious unintended consequences. I know my phone's going to come off the hook when these large mature trees are coming down. Mr. Gonzalez, I have another question for you. Is this ordinance, now that it says occupied lots, is this ordinance going to be used by Public Works to remove trees because the root systems is lifting the pavement on county roads?
That's a good question. I think right now for adjacent property owners to county right-of-ways, if for the sidewalks, if they have the code exists where the property owner is responsible for maintenance of the sidewalks. So if there's trees and shrubbery causing uplift, we would usually notify the adjacent property owner to please address the situation. So there might be some interplay with this. I'd have to take a look at it a little more. But that's an interesting question.
All right. Well, not quite. I think the answer is yes. But if you want to think about it some more and come back with a better answer, when it comes back to council, that might be the most appropriate time. So unintended consequences, you're reducing the ambience of the neighborhood. Property value might go down by removing mature trees, and I'm not talking about the ones for public safety reasons. Those, I won't back down off of those. I agree with several people who've commented. I don't think these complaints should be going to the mayor's office. I think they should be going to Public Works. Let them deal with it, and then if the action isn't resolved there, then you go up to the mayor's office. I just can't see the mayor's office handling letter writing for this kind of stuff. He may have more to do than that. But I'm going to be interested to see what comes back from the commissions on this one, because I'm really, really concerned about the unintended consequences of having a bad neighbor policy empowered. If you've ever had to live, everybody in my neighborhood, almost everybody in my neighborhood are absolutely fabulous people. But if you've ever had to live in a neighborhood with a bad neighbor, it can be a nightmare. So, thank you.
Was there anybody else, any more discussion? Mr. Kerr wanted to comment last. Ms. Willie?
Yeah, just, are we moving on to that it would be referred to the...
That's a motion on the floor.
Okay. So I'm supportive of that.
Mr. Kern?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, good comments, everybody. I appreciate that. And Ms. Ford, I'm sure the mayor is going to be happy that we changed that to Public Works. So I can work on some of these adjustments. Really, I think it's going to have some other unintended consequences on the positive side, where people are going to be more responsive to taking care of these issues while they're small enough. I'm not seeing this as the big lychee tree that's been there for 10 years or 20 years, or the avocado trees, and these trees that are more part of the neighborhood. They've been there. Majority of those I don't think would be deemed as having an immediate, fire, health, safety, property damage issue. It comes down to those really fast-growing trees that all of a sudden within 5 years there's a serious issue there, and the person could have taken care of that issue with a machete. And then they don't, and it gets huge, and then it becomes an issue that's not manageable. So I think it'll hopefully promote people taking care of those issues when they're small. I happen to have a machine, so I can let mine go a little bit further, and I just push them down. And that's the same situation with Mr. Illigan saying, as far as the person on a fixed income and having that tree there. It's not to put a burden on them. I think we should be able to, they might be able to help family come in. A lot of times they should be fine. It's about taking care of it before it happens. That's why we drive the speed limit. Not that we're worried about the cop sitting there in the corner, but we don't want that, so we're cautious. Again, it's hard when there's really no teeth, as Mr. Onishi said. He dealt with the seniors. There's really nothing that anybody can do right now. It's a major problem. We can adjust this, have it so it'll work, and so it'll benefit the people here. And a lot of times, the biggest issue are the people that do not live here, the people that live somewhere else, and they just have a lot, and they have no idea what the issue is there. The owner might send them a letter, and they don't do anything. So we actually need to be able to have teeth to be able to do something and make sure that we are protecting the people. So I'm curious to see what comes through the commissions, and I look forward to continuing to work on this bill and make it as good as it can be. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the support.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. At this time, I don't see any more discussion. So the motion on the floor is to refer Bill 64 to the Director of the Department of Environmental Management and the Environmental Management Commission for their comments and recommendations. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Order. Can you, at the end of when we do voice votes, say 9-0 or whatever it is, just so on a couple occasions my staff has asked that be done to make it clear in case somebody's absent? Okay, for their reports. Okay, thank you.
Sure, so that was a 9-0 vote passage.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Move to adjourn.
It's been moved to adjourn by Mr. Kern, second by Mr. Yoshimoto. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
That was a 9-0.